Boker Tov and welcome. Today we're going to discuss whether God really answers prayer. Now today is Yom Shani. It's the second day of the week and we're going to be starting a new homeschooling week in our house. So I wanted to discuss the verse of the week. That's Psalm 141:2. My name is Ann Elliott and I'm the creator and founder of homeschoolingtorah.com. Psalm 141 verse 2 says, "Let my prayer be set before you as incense, and the lifting up of my hands as the evening sacrifice." Now, if you're reading through the Torah portions each week, maybe it's in your home for Homeschooling Torah or together with your local congregation, you know that we're going through the Mishkan, the tabernacle, and we're discussing each of the pieces of furniture that were made and the offerings that were brought freely given from their hearts. And my husband and I both commented last week on Sabbath. We said, well, where was the table, or where was the altar of incense? Did you see it? And we kind of looked, and then we looked again, and we wait a minute, that's in the next portion. And it isn't until the end of the portion that finally Yehovah provides a way for them to offer their prayers. Now we know from other places in the scriptures that the incense is a picture of the daily prayers that rise as a sweet smell before Yehovah. And I wanted to think about the fact that, my prayers haven't always been answered. Sometimes it feels as if I'm annoying God, or if He really doesn't want to hear me. And in fact, a verse that used to really trouble me, especially if I would pray for something and then absolutely nothing would happen from those prayers. Proverbs 28 verse 9. When I first saw this verse, especially, and I think the first time I really paid attention to it was after I started to keep Sabbath, I started to keep the feast, I started to make sure that my diet was clean, and I was trying to understand the Torah, and then I saw this verse, Proverbs 28:9. If anyone turns a deaf ear to the Torah, even his prayers are detestable. In fact, we do know that in the history of Israel, his temple was destroyed because they turned a deaf ear to his Torah. They did not want to have anything to do with obeying the covenant that they had made with their father. And so the way for them to give their prayers was destroyed. Now, the sages have said through the centuries, since the temple was destroyed in AD 70, and even in the Babylonian time when they were taken away as captives to Babylon, we see Daniel also doing this. But the prayers, at the times when the incense would be offered in the temple each day, are the same times that the men of Israel come before Yehovah and set their prayers before Him, and the lifting up of their hands is a reference to prayer. It is as the evening sacrifice. We know that Daniel prayed 3 times a day, and there are 3 times a day that the offerings are offered in the temple. So, why did God answer Daniel's prayers even though the temple was destroyed? And do we have any assurance that God will actually answer our prayers? That's the one that really gets me. Well, right before His crucifixion, Yeshua was talking to His disciples, and this was, at their Passover meal. And we read in John 15, actually, that you can read what He says to His disciples for many chapters. John 14, John 15, John 16, John 17, and I love the book of John. There's just so much in this. And I noticed something in John 14, 15, and 16. Each chapter seems to be, the culmination of each chapter is, ask anything you want, and I will give it to you. Really? So let's look at a couple of those. John 14, verses 13 and 14, Yeshua says, "I will do whatever you ask in my name, so that the Son may bring glory to the Father. You may ask me for anything in my name, and I will do it." Wow. Has that really felt like it's been true in your life? I don't know. It doesn't felt very true in my life. At first I thought it was because I wasn't keeping the Torah, as it said in Proverbs 28. If I turn a deaf ear to the Torah, my prayers are an abomination. And really, I do think that was a lot of it. Because many times I did not want to obey. I would know there would be things, and this is going back before I even knew Torah, but I had a desire to please him. I had a desire to do what his word says. I think that's Torah, right? And I was aiming that direction, but weren't there moments in your life, and there were in mine, that I just didn't want to have anything to do with what he said? And at those moments, I think that I would still want things from him. I'd pray for my friend with, this sickness, or pray for this financial problem, or please help me today. It's going to be a hard day. And it didn't feel as if anything happened. But since that time, I would read this verse and I would think to myself, I will do whatever you ask in my name, so that the Son may bring glory to the Father. You may ask me for anything in my name, and I will do it. And then, have you ever heard the verse that says, you have not because you ask not? That's where I was. I didn't really believe that those verses could possibly be true. Just didn't seem to fit my perception of reality. Going on, he does put some qualification on this. You'll see it in the very next verse, verse 15 of John 14. If you love me, you will obey what I command. And I will ask the Father, and he will give you another counselor. Let's go down to verse 21. Whoever has my commands and obeys them, he is the one who loves me. Verse 23. Yeshua says, if anyone loves me, he will obey my teaching. My Father will love him, and we will come to him and make our home with him, make our tabernacle with him. We will dwell on earth with him, where the incense is offered daily. Do you see that picture? If you love me and obey my teaching, he will dwell in you as if you are the very tabernacle of Yehovah on earth. And then it says, he who does not love me will not obey my teaching. These words that you hear are not my own, so that Yeshua didn't have a new command. They belong to the Father. Thus says Yehovah. He is the one who sent Yeshua. And then let's look at verse 31. Yeshua says, the world must learn that I love the Father, and I do exactly what my Father has commanded me. So we can see here that what the Father commands and what Yeshua commands are the same. It is the Torah. Let's look at chapter 15, verses 7 and 8. He says the same thing again. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be given you. This is to my Father's glory, that you will bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. So now it's almost identical wording, but it's showing that it is an evidence that we are his disciples. Let's look at verse 16. It says, you did not choose me, I chose you and appointed you to go and bear that fruit, the fruit that will last. And the Father will give you whatever you ask in my name. See it? It's right there. Plainly, he said it how many times now? But look at verses 9 and 10 where he does qualify it. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Now remain in my love. If you obey my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have obeyed my Father's commands and remain in his love. See, it's all the same. His Father's commands are the same as Yeshua's commands, and we remain in them. We are remaining in his love. He loves you. He wants to give you what you ask. Now let's go down and look at chapter 16, verses 23 and 24, because it's going to say the same thing again. In that day you will no longer ask me anything, Yeshua says. I tell you the truth, my Father will give you whatever you ask in my name. Until now, you have not asked for anything in my name. Ask, and you will receive, that your joy will be complete. I used to try to drum up joy. Don't worry, Anne. Don't worry. Don't be scared. Don't be afraid. Don't let your heart be troubled. But I didn't have joy. And I really didn't. And all through the day, I would just quickly go back to worry. But you know what? It says, until now, you have not asked for anything in my name. I tended to say, dear friends, will you pray for me? And I'd talk to all my friends, go to the friends that I thought would get their prayers answered. I'd say, please pray for me. And they would say they would. And then we would pray maybe at church or at home at dinner time or whatever. But for me to directly go to the throne of God, I was not that bold. And I don't think I had joy. The book of Hebrews was written for some believers in the first century before the temple was destroyed, but they were already being persecuted and not allowed to come into the synagogues and into the temple for their faith in Yeshua. And the writer of Hebrews in 4:16 says, "Let us approach the throne of grace with confidence." See, they weren't allowed to come in at the times of prayer each day. So what were they going to do? How were they going to have their prayers answered? They weren't there with the synagogue at 3 in the afternoon, or how would they get their prayers answered? And he says, let us approach directly the throne of grace with confidence, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. Soon the temple would be destroyed in AD 70 and has never been rebuilt. No, the incense is not offered each day. The sacrifices are not offered, and that is not the time that most people even lift their hands. I am saying that those are good times to pray. They are. I think those kinds of disciplines, I have another video you can check and see on the times of prayer. But the fact is, we have confidence and permission to enter his presence at any time, and our joy is full as we know we can go directly to him and lift up our prayers as that evening sacrifice. It smells just as good to him. He loves us and he wants to give us that joy. He says, you have not done it yet. And I wanted to challenge you today. Have you really wrestled with the fact that you alone are allowed to go into the presence of God because of Yeshua and his shed blood for you, and to ask anything in his authority, in his name, and he will do it for you? You know, my prayer is that we will be known as a people of answered prayer, that fruit will be evident in our lives, that people will look at us and say there's something different about them. They obey the commands, but that's not it. They have such love and joy, and I think it's because they always have their prayers answered. Have you asked him for anything today? Ask him to make himself known to you, make himself evident to you, that he would come and answer your prayers, and that your prayers would be sweet smelling to him. Have a great week. Shavua Tov. We'll see you back again tomorrow with our parenting series.